Hi, everybody. This video is about how to create a parent contact list or any other type of email contact list using Google Contacts. Now, Google Contacts is a separate program from Gmail, but as we'll see at the end, Google Contacts works with Gmail to make it easier to send emails to large amounts of people instead of having to enter addresses one at a time. So, to find Google Contacts, if you're in Gmail or another Google program, you can look for the waffle in the top right hand corner of the screen where it says Google Apps, and you can click, and you'll see that in the menu, there's Google Contacts. It may appear in a slightly different place within this menu for you. This is where it shows up for me. You can see the icon, and we're just going to click on it, and Google Contacts will open in a new tab. As you can see on my screen, I don't have any Google Contacts yet, but we're going to change that in just a minute. But before we do that, the first thing I like to do when I'm making a new contact list or getting ready to add a bunch of contacts is I create a label. So the label is Google's equivalent of a contact list. So when you add contacts, you assign them to a label. And one of the convenient things is you can assign a single contact to multiple labels at once. So it can make that process a little easier too. I'm just going to click right where it says Create Label. And we're going to give it a name. Now, you can name it pretty much anything you want. I'm going to name it Parent Contact. The name does matter, and we'll see why a little bit later. But name it whatever makes the most sense to you. So I'm going to call this one Parent Contact and click Save. And now you'll see on the left side of my screen, that label that we just created is right there. So now I am ready to create my first contact. And there are 3 ways to do this in Google Contacts. We're going to discuss 2 of them. So in the top left corner of the window where it says Create Contact, I'm going to click right there. And I can choose whether I want to create a contact, which is a single person, or create multiple contacts. So I can build an entire contact list out at once if I so desire. So we're going to start with create a single contact. So now you can see we have this little contact card on our screen where we can start to fill in the information about the contact that we're creating. So I'm just going to go ahead and make up a name, Bob Roberts. Many of these fields are optional. You don't need to put in a company or a job title. Obviously, you're going to want to put in an email. So let's do that. So I'm just going to make up a Gmail address. And then it says here labeled. Now, one of the things that that we can easily confuse is this label is not the same thing as this label. So this label is what you would use to add this email address, this new contact, to your parent contact list. This label is to specify what kind of email address it is. And you see if when I click on it, is it a home email address? Is it a work email address or other? You don't have to fill that out. But just know that when you want to go to assign to a specific label, that's actually up here and not here. So just keep that in mind. Again, everything from here is optional. There's a Show More tab where you can add some additional things. It's also possible I can go and add a second email address if I want to. I can add a phone number. Notes, if you wanted to say something like this is so-and-so's parent or guardian or whatever, that would be a good place to put that as well. But at this point, I feel like I'm ready to save this contact. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And you'll see that I now have this contact that's been saved. I can close out of this. And you'll see that now on my home contacts, I now have one contact here. And you'll see I have a 1 next to parent contact when I go to click on that. It'll also show me all of my contacts in just this label. So now we're going to try adding a contact or adding multiple contacts at the same time. So just like I did before, I'm going to go to Create Contact. And this time I'm going to choose Create Multiple Contacts. And you'll see that the window looks a little bit different now this time. The way that we're going to add multiple contacts is by adding names and email addresses. And the way that we do that is going to be very important because it's easy to get it a little bit mixed up if we don't do it the right way. So I'm going to add another person here. I'm going to add Matthew Matthews. And so that's the first name and last name. And then to add the email address that corresponds with that, I'm going to use an angle bracket or the less than sign, which is shift and then comma. And then I'm going to type the email address in between an opening angle bracket and a closing angle bracket, which is shift period. And then I'm going to use the tab key on my keyboard. And now that's going to kind of put this in a little bit of a bubble to let you know that when you go to hit create at the end, this is what it's going to save. Now, if we by any chance forget to use the brackets, I'll show you that. You're also going to want to add a comma between the context that you're adding if you don't use the tab method. But this way is fine. So now to add a second name into this multiple contact, I'm just going to type another name here. So we're going to go Daniel Danielson. And so let's see, if I go and I forget to use the brackets this time, when I press tab, you're going to notice, oh, it's going to give me the error. Another thing that could happen too is if I go Daniel Danielson and I put a comma here and then I type the email address, you'll notice that it created two separate bubbles. So these actually aren't together, meaning that when I hit create, you're going to see three additions, one correct, and then one name without an email and one email without a name. So the brackets are very important. We cannot forget those. So one more time, Daniel Danielson, opening angle bracket, DannyD@gmail.com, closing angle bracket, and tab. So now we're just about ready to hit that create button. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we add that label, that parent contact label that we created. So I'm going to go up here where it says no label, and I'm going to hit parent contact and then hit create. Now, in case you forget to do this, you can go back and change it. So I'm actually going to not select the label so I can show that part as well. I'm going to hit create for these two contacts, and you'll see that it's working. And then now I have three contacts on this list, on my basic contact list, but you'll see with parent contact, I still only have just the one. So to fix that, I'm going to hover over these letters for the different names that I need to change. And when you do that, they turn into checkboxes. So I'm going to check these two names. And then on this little toolbar up here, I'm going to use this button, the Manage Labels. And I'm going to select Parent Contact. And then I'm going to select Apply. And now it will apply the label to those two. So now when I go to Parent Contact, now you'll see, give it just a second to load here. Now you'll see the three names are there as they're supposed to be. So now that we have all of our contacts created, we're going to go back to Gmail. So got my Gmail tab open here, and I'm going to compose a new email. Now, this is where the benefit of Google Contacts comes in. So instead of having to type each email address one at a time, what we can do instead is look for the name of the contact label that we just created. So if I search parent contact, there you'll see that there's the name of the label, and you can see some of the addresses that go with that. And if I just click on it, there they all show up right in one place. So with one click, I've added all of those addresses into this email that I want to send. Sometimes when you go to create your list, there's a little bit of a delay before Gmail picks up that label. So sometimes if you just refresh your browser, it'll show up the second time in case you do it and it's missing or it's missing some addresses. So that's easy enough to do. Now, one thing to consider when you're sending an email is you may not necessarily want all of your parents to see each other's email addresses. And I'm sure some of your parents don't want to see those other email addresses. So one thing you can do instead, I'm going to get rid of these, is you can use BCC instead, which is blind carbon copy. So now if I go blind carbon copy, parent, contact, and click, now those three email addresses are in the BCC line, which means that they only see that you've sent the email to them. They don't see that it was sent to anybody else. So again, your parents aren't seeing each other's email addresses. We don't end up with any embarrassing reply alls, that kind of stuff. So something to consider when using your contact lists in Gmail. So that is how we can use Google Contacts to make our lives in Gmail a little bit easier when contacting our parents. And please let me know if you have any other questions, and we'll see you in the next video.